Hello. I want to tell you a story. A true story. It's been years since it happened, but I think about it every single day. I can't forget, no matter how hard I try. It's like a shadow following me, always just out of sight but never gone. I'm Huiying. I'm 28 now, but this story begins more than a decade ago. Back when I was just a teenager living in Hong Kong. Back when I had a normal life. Back when I had my two best friends, Mei Ling and Xiaolan. We weren't just friends. We were sisters. Hong Kong was our playground. We'd spend hours wandering through the bustling markets, squeezing into packed MTR trains, and laughing as we tried the latest street food trends. There's something magical about the city at night. The neon signs casting their glow over the streets, the smell of roasted chestnuts and egg waffles in the air, the distant hum of conversations blending with the clatter of trams. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were ours. Mei Ling was the dreamer. She had this energy about her, this way of making you believe anything was possible. She'd talk about her future as if it was already written, with a sparkle in her eyes that made you want to believe her. One day, "I'll be rich," she'd say, her voice full of conviction. "I'll have a big house, a designer wardrobe, and I'll take you both to Paris. We'll drink champagne under the Eiffel Tower. Just wait, you'll see." Xiaolan and I would laugh, but we loved that about Mei Ling. She made us feel like the world was bigger than our cramped apartments and schoolwork. Xiaolan was quieter, more serious. She didn't talk about her dreams as much, and it took time to understand why. It wasn't until we got really close that she opened up to me about her stepfather. "I hate going home," she told me one day, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's controlling, always yelling, always finding reasons to punish me. I can't wait to leave this place." My heart broke for her, but Xiaolan was strong in her own way. She didn't let her pain define her. She smiled and laughed with us, hiding her struggles so well that most people would never have guessed. And then there was me. I was the grounded one, the one who kept us together when Mei Ling's dreams felt too big or Xiaolan's struggles felt too heavy. I didn't have big dreams or deep secrets. I just wanted us to stay the way we were forever. The three of us would spend every weekend together. My parents didn't mind. They loved Mei Ling and Xiaolan like they were their own daughters. Most Fridays, they'd let me invite them over for a sleepover. We'd stay up late talking about boys, gossiping about our classmates, and planning our futures. Looking back, it's hard to believe how happy we were. That Friday night, I had no idea it would be the last time we'd all be together. The last time we'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. The last time we'd feel like the world was ours. We were just three girls with dreams, three girls who thought we had all the time in the world. But everything changed that night. Something we did, something we should never have done, tore us apart forever. If you're reading this, please learn from my mistake. There are things you don't mess with, things you can't take back once they've started. Let me tell you what happened that night. Let me tell you about the thing we did. Because maybe, just maybe, you can avoid the nightmare that still haunts me to this day. It was a Friday night just like so many others before it. My mom had spent the entire afternoon cooking, and the apartment was filled with the warm, comforting smell of her food. She loved when Mei Ling and Xiaolan came over. She treated them like her own daughters. That night, she made a feast, steamed fish, stir-fried vegetables, and a huge bowl of lotus root soup with pork ribs. We sat around the dining table, laughing and talking, our plates piled high. Felt perfect, like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. "Your mom is amazing," Mei Ling said, leaning back in her chair. "This is better than any restaurant in Hong Kong. If I had food like this every day," Xiaolan said with a grin, "I'd probably never leave your house." We laughed, and my mom waved her chopsticks at us. "Eat more, girls. You're all too skinny." After dinner, we helped clean up and thanked my mom for the meal. Then we decided to head to the supermarket to pick up snacks for the night. The supermarket was crowded, as it always was on a Friday night, but we didn't mind. We wandered through the aisles, grabbing bags of chips, bottles of Coca-Cola, and a box of microwave popcorn. Xiaolan insisted on getting gummy candies, and Mei Ling picked out chocolate biscuits. By the time we left, our arms were full of snacks, and we were laughing about the cashier's annoyed expression when Mei Ling tried to pay with coins. It was one of those moments that felt so normal, so simple, that you don't realize how precious it is until it's gone. We went back to my apartment, dumped everything on the living room table, and got ready for our usual Friday night routine, a movie marathon. But that's not what happened. It started with Xiaolan. We were sitting on the floor, scrolling through our phones while deciding what to watch, when she sighed. "I wish my stepfather would just disappear," she muttered, more to herself than to us. Her words hung in the air, heavier than I expected. I looked at her, unsure what to say. She rarely talked about him unless she was really upset. "You know," Mei Ling said, "if I could wish for anything, I'd wish to be rich. Like, so rich that I'd never have to think about money again." They both looked at me, waiting for my answer. I shrugged, trying to lighten the mood. "I don't know. Maybe I'd wish for Mayu to finally get what she deserves. She's been a pain in my life since primary school." We laughed, but there was something strange about that moment. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was Mei Ling who found the website. She was scrolling through her phone when she suddenly gasped. "Hey, I found something weird. You have to see this," she said, holding up her phone, her expression a mix of curiosity and unease. The screen showed a website, but not like any I'd seen before. The background was pitch black, with glowing red text and strange symbols scattered across the page. "What is it?" I asked. "It's called The Devil's Wish," she said. "It says you can make any wish you want, and it'll come true." Xiaolan frowned. "That's ridiculous. It's obviously fake." Mei Ling shrugged. "Maybe, but look at these comments. People are saying it works. Someone wished for money and won the lottery. Another wished for revenge on someone, and it happened." I leaned closer to read the comments, my stomach twisting. There was something about the site that didn't feel right. The symbols on the page seemed to shift when I looked at them, like they were alive. "We shouldn't mess with this," Xiaolan said firmly. "Let's just close it and watch a movie." I should have listened to her, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Come on, it's just a website. It's not like it's real. What's the harm?" Mei Ling grinned. "Exactly. Let's try it. Just for fun." Xiaolan hesitated but eventually gave in. "Fine. But this is stupid." The instructions on the site were simple but strange. The first step was to draw a satanic star on the floor in red. "What does that even mean?" Mei Ling asked, tilting her head. "It's probably a pentagram," I said. "You know, like in those old horror movies." We found some red markers in my desk drawer and started drawing on the floor. The star's lines were shaky and uneven, but it looked close enough to the one on the website. The second step was to light candles at each point of the star. "Do you even have candles?" Xiaolan asked. "I think my mom has some," I said. I found a box of tea light candles in the kitchen and placed them at each point of the star. The final step was to say the words on the screen. The text was written in a language I didn't recognize, full of strange, twisting letters. I tried to sound it out, my voice shaky and uncertain. "Stop," Xiaolan said. "You don't even know what this means." "It's just gibberish," I said, brushing her off. But it wasn't gibberish. Not at all. We didn't know it at the time, but the words we spoke that night were far from meaningless. They were ancient, powerful, and tied to something far darker than we could have imagined. The website had a warning at the bottom of the page, written in small, flickering text. "Be careful what you wish for. Nothing is free, not even from the devil." But we ignored it. We thought it was a joke. We thought we were safe. We were wrong. When the star was finally drawn, the candles in place, we all sat on the floor, facing each other. The website had one last instruction. We had to hold hands, close our eyes, and say the words together. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad horror movie, but there was also a strange weight to the moment. We hesitated, the three of us sitting in a circle, our hands clasped tightly. "Let's just get it over with," Mei Ling said, trying to sound confident. But I could see the nervous flicker in her eyes. I nodded. "Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Together, we began reciting the strange words from the website. The language was unfamiliar, guttural and sharp. The syllables scraping against my throat as I spoke. Felt wrong. like the words didn't belong in my mouth. As soon as we finished, we all opened our eyes, staring at each other in silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was still, the air heavy with the faint smell of candle wax. Then I felt it, a sudden, biting cold that seemed to seep into my skin, chilling me to the bone. It wasn't the kind of cold you could explain away. It felt alive, like it was crawling through the room, wrapping around us like invisible hands. "Do you feel that?" Xiaolon whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, my breath coming out in a shaky cloud. The air was freezing, and I could swear I felt someone watching us, their gaze heavy and piercing. Then we heard it. A voice, low, guttural, and inhuman. It wasn't coming from any one direction. It was everywhere, vibrating in the air around us. "It's accepted." The words sent a jolt of terror through me. My heart raced, my hands gripping Mei Ling and Xiaolon's tighter. I looked at them, hoping one of them would laugh and tell me it was a prank, but their faces were pale, their eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" Mei Ling whispered. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely audible. For a long moment, none of us moved, the room suffocatingly silent. Then Xiaolon pulled her hands away and stood up. "It's done. Let's clean this up and forget it ever happened." We blew out the candles and scrubbed the red marker off the floor. The star faded, but I could still see its faint outline, like a ghost of what we'd done. I told myself it was just my imagination, that we'd gotten carried away by our own fear. When we finished cleaning, we sat on the couch and turned on a movie, trying to act like everything was normal. But I couldn't focus. Every sound in the apartment made me jump. Every shadow seemed darker, thicker. When the movie ended, we went to bed, exhausted and desperate for the safety of sleep. That night, I dreamed of her. I was standing in a dark place, a void that stretched endlessly in every direction. The air was thick and heavy, pressing against my skin like water. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel her before I saw her. The woman. She emerged from the darkness, her long black hair flowing like smoke around her. Her eyes burned red, their glow casting faint shadows on her pale, angular face. She was dressed in black, her clothes blending into the void, making her look like a figure carved out of darkness. "We accept your wish," she said, her voice low and echoing, like it came from deep within the earth. "And your friend's wishes, too." I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, my body frozen. All I could do was stare as she smiled. A cold, cruel smile that sent a shiver down my spine. Then she leaned closer, her red eyes burning into mine. "Be careful," she whispered. "Nothing is free." I woke up with a gasp, my chest heaving as I scrambled to sit up in bed. The room was dark, the faint glow of the streetlights outside casting long shadows across the walls. My heart was racing, my skin clammy with sweat. For a moment, I thought I could still see her, standing in the corner of the room, watching me. But when I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, we sat at the table eating breakfast, trying to pretend everything was normal. Xiaolon and Mei Ling were quiet, their usual laughter replaced by nervous glances and forced smiles. "We don't tell anyone," Mei Ling said suddenly, breaking the silence. "What?" I asked. "About last night. We don't tell anyone. Not your mom, not our classmates. No one. It's our secret." I nodded. "Okay, our secret." After breakfast, they left, each heading back to their own home. I felt a strange sense of relief as the door closed behind them, like I could finally breathe again. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was Xiaolon. "Hello," I said. Her voice was breathless, filled with something I couldn't quite place. "Weeing. He's gone." "What?" "My stepfather. He's gone. He didn't come home last night. I don't know where he is." I didn't know what to say. Before I could respond, another call came through, this time from Mei Ling. "Weeing," she shouted, her voice buzzing with excitement. "You won't believe this. My mom just got a call. We won the lottery. Can you believe it? We're rich." I hung up, my hands shaking. Their wishes had come true. First, I was amazed. How could this be happening? It was impossible, unreal. But as the day went on, the amazement faded, replaced by something darker. The woman's words echoed in my mind. Nothing is free. I couldn't stop wondering what price we'd have to pay. The wishes had come true, but instead of joy, all I felt was dread. For 3 days, I tried to go on like everything was normal. I didn't call Xiaolan or Mei Ling, hoping that staying apart might somehow make things safer. But I couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. I barely slept, and when I did, the woman from my dream was waiting for me. Every night, I saw her standing in that dark void, her black hair flowing like smoke, her red eyes burning into mine. "You have to pay," she would whisper. "Nothing is free." On the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mei Ling and Xiaolan, my hands trembling as I dialed their numbers. "We need to meet," I said. "Something isn't right." We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near my apartment. It was one of our usual spots, cozy and crowded, where we could always talk for hours without anyone bothering us. But that day, the air felt different. We sat at a corner table, staring at our untouched cups of coffee. Xiaolan's face was pale, her eyes hollow. "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice barely audible. "My stepfather is gone. They found his body in the harbor yesterday." Mei Ling gasped. "What? How?" "They don't know," Xiaolan said, shaking her head. "They said it looked like he'd been there for days, but he didn't drown. There were marks on his neck." A shiver ran down my spine. "Didn't you say he didn't come home the night we—" "Stop," Xiaolan said sharply, her voice breaking. "I don't want to talk about it." Mei Ling leaned forward, her hands trembling. "What about me? My family won the lottery, but my mom's been sick ever since. She can't even get out of bed. The doctors don't know what's wrong with her. Every time I see her, she looks worse." I looked at them, my heart pounding. "What if this is the price?" Xiaolan glared at me. "Price? For what? We didn't agree to anything." Before I could answer, a low, guttural voice echoed in my ears. "You have to pay." I froze, my blood turning to ice. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. So clear it drowned out the sound of the bustling coffee shop around us. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "Hear what?" Mei Ling asked, her brow furrowing. "The voice," I said. "It said we have to pay." Mei Ling and Xiaolan stared at me in silence. Then, as if on cue, Xiaolan's phone buzzed. She picked it up, her hand shaking. "Hello?" she said. I watched as her face went pale, her mouth falling open. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No, no, no. What is it?" I asked, my heart racing. She hung up and looked at us, tears streaming down her face. "It's my mom," she said. "She's gone." Mei Ling covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide with horror. I felt like the world was collapsing around me. That night, the dreams became unbearable. The woman wasn't just in the void anymore. She was in my room. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, her face inches from mine, her red eyes burning with malice. "You still have to pay," she whispered, "or I'll take everything." The next day, I called Mei Ling. She didn't answer. I went to her house, banging on the door until her younger brother opened it. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "She's gone," he said, his voice trembling. I stumbled back, my vision blurring. "What do you mean?" She left a note," he said, his voice cracking. "She said she couldn't take it anymore. She said the voice wouldn't stop." My legs gave out and I collapsed on the doorstep. Xiaolan was next. I tried calling her, begging her to stay safe, but she wouldn't pick up. Finally, I went to her apartment only to find the police outside. "What happened?" I asked one of the neighbors. The woman shook her head, her face pale. "They found her in her room," she said. She was crying about someone watching her. And then, she just couldn't take it anymore. The world spun around me. My 2 best friends were gone. I was the only one left. That night, I dreamed of the woman again. She stood in the void, her red eyes glowing brighter than ever. "You still have to pay," she said, her voice cold and merciless. "I didn't want this," I screamed. She smiled, tilting her head. "You accepted the deal. The devil always collects." When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. The apartment felt colder than ever, the shadows deeper. I felt like I wasn't alone, like something was watching me from the darkness. It's been years since that night, but I'm still haunted by what happened. I lost everything. My two best friends, my sense of safety, my life as I knew it. Sometimes, I feel like the devil is still watching me, waiting for the right moment to take more. I don't know if it'll come for my parents, my future, or my soul. All I know is this: nothing is free. If you're reading this, please, I beg you, don't mess with things you don't understand. Don't let your curiosity lead you to the devil's door, because once you open it, you can never close it again. Epilogue. I don't know how much time I have left. Every night, I see her in my dreams, standing in the darkness, smiling. She hasn't said anything yet, but I know she's waiting. And when she finally speaks, I know it'll be the end.